You're now listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.
Hello, Colorado. This is the Engage the Rockies podcast. I am your host, Jarvis Caldwell, Executive Director of Engage the Rockies. This is your week in review for May 6th to May 10th, where we deliver you the top headlines from around the state and local in 10 minutes or less. Governor Jared Polis on Monday signed the state's $40.6 billion budget for the next fiscal year, which includes $2 billion more in spending. In the House Joint Budget Committee, member Representative Rick Taggart of Grand Junction was the only Republican to vote in favor, joining 43 Democrats in the 44-16 vote. In the Senate, the committee's 2 Republicans joined 21 Democrats in voting in favor of the final result. The 2024-2025 budget is $2 billion more than the current year's spending allocation. Those increases are driven by bigger allocations for healthcare, a significant expansion in the state's workforce, and more money for schools, seeing increased enrollment of immigrant students whose families illegally crossed America's southern border and traveled to Colorado. Moving on. This past week, on Wednesday specifically, it was Sine Die, or Sine Dia, however you prefer to say it. That means an end to the 2024 legislative session and 74th General Assembly. Colorado lawmakers passed bipartisan property tax relief bill as the 2024 legislative session came to a close. The General Assembly hopes their legislation will persuade voters not to back property tax measures on the November ballot that would ravage state and local government budgets. The measure, which would likely save the average homeowner several $100s annually, calls for holding residential and commercial property tax rates steady this year for taxes owed in 2025. The residential property assessment rate would be 6.7% with a $55,000 value reduction, and the commercial rate would be 27.9% with a $30,000 value reduction. A change made late to this bill, which is Senate Bill 233, the property tax bill, is that it would be repealed if voters in November pass Initiative 50, which would cap the annual statewide increase in property tax revenue at 4%, or Initiative 108, which would significantly reduce the state's property tax assessment rates. Initiative 50 and 108 ballot measures are backed by the conservative political nonprofit Advance Colorado and Colorado Concern, a nonprofit that represents the state's CEOs. And you can find out more about Ballot Initiative 50 if you go to our Ballot Initiative podcast episode where we interviewed Michael Fields, and we talked about it kind of towards the end of the podcast. Continuing with the same story, as Representative Lisa Frizzell, a Castle Rock Republican and one of the main sponsors of Senate Bill 233, said, if both the legislation, which is Senate Bill 233, and one or both of the initiatives were to be enacted, it would be a financial disaster for the state. Senate Bill 233 passed the Senate by a 33-2 vote. It passed the House with a 57-6 vote. The measure cleared the legislature in 3 days, the minimum amount of time it takes to pass a bill. Moving on, in other news from the Capitol, in the final week, the attempt to ban so-called assault weapons in Colorado fails for second consecutive year. House Bill 1292 sponsors asked to halt the bill, calling for more future discussions on the subject. Primary sponsor, Senator Julie Gonzalez, Democrat from Denver, announced Monday that she would ask the committee to end the bill. In her decision, Senator Gonzalez stated, after a thoughtful conversations with my Senate colleagues, I decided that more conversations need to take place outside of the pressure cooker of the Capitol during the last weeks of the legislative session. In that spirit, I look forward to renewing and continuing those discussions over the interim. It is clear that survivors of devastating gun violence, responsible gun owners, and local and national policy advocates remain committed to doing the work necessary to save lives, and an assault weapons ban will do just that. The 2024 so-called assault weapons ban made it much further through the legislature than last year's attempt. During the 2023 session, a so-called assault weapons ban was narrowly defeated in the House State Affairs Committee and never reached any chamber floor. Moving on, in other news from around the state, pro-Palestinian protesters reject Aurora campus's offer of $15,000 donation to Gaza in exchange for dismantling encampment. The donation would be made under Students for a Democratic Society's name, but they rejected it. In a letter to the student group organizing the protest, officials said several donors are prepared to offer a $15,000 donation to the International Committee of the Red Cross, which operates in both Gaza and Tel Aviv, if the activists dismantled their encampment by 5 p.m. Thursday. Ignoring university officials, the pro-Palestinian protesters have set up roughly 50 tents in an encampment that started last Thursday. Demonstrators over the weekend at the Aurora campus in Denver say they are prepared to defend the encampment until their demands, notably divestment from companies that operate in Israel, are met. Moving on. In Denver, migrants refused to leave encampment and sent Mayor Mike Johnston a list of 13 demands. The list includes demands of fresh, culturally appropriate foods, access to free immigration lawyers, and unlimited shower time. The migrants insisted that if these are not met, they will not leave their tent community. Moving on to local El Paso news. Colorado State Patrol has revealed which of the state's counties accounted for the most impaired driving citations in 2023, and the data reveals a few surprises. In total, 4,120 impaired driving citations were handed out by Colorado State Patrol last year. And remember, that doesn't include those also handed out by local law enforcement. This is just from Colorado State Patrol. Ranking first was El Paso County, the most populated county in Colorado, home to Colorado Springs and multiple major highways. Following El Paso County were Adams County, Jefferson County, Weld County, and Larimer County in that order. Moving on. El Paso County is starting a years-long process to update its land use development code, a document that will shape where and how new homes and businesses are built. The county's development code was last updated 17 years ago, when about 588,000 people lived in the community. Since then, about 151,000 new residents have moved in, according to the Colorado Demographer's Office. The commissioners agreed during an informal meeting Tuesday it was time to re-examine the document and made high-level suggestions to their consultant, Clarion, about what they would like to see from the powerful code. The first hearing for the new building codes will be June 6. Moving on. Over a year after the death of Fountain police officer Julian Becerra, the trial of the man accused of causing his death kicked off on Tuesday with opening statements and the testimonies of nearly 10 people. Devin Beaubien, 32, is the final person awaiting the end of their case among 3 individuals arrested for their alleged involvement in Becerra's death. Beaubien, Anthony Vallejos, and Danisha Pacheco were arrested in February 2023 after stealing a car and leading multiple law enforcement agencies on a chase throughout El Paso County. The prosecution side of the courtroom was completely at capacity, with uniformed law enforcement making up the crowd. 4th Judicial District Attorney Michael Allen was present in court for most of the morning proceedings. Beaubien's side of the courtroom was significantly emptier. And last but not least, don't forget that Mother's Day is this Sunday, May 12th. Those are your top stories for the week of May 6th through May 10th. Please tune in each Friday for your week in review from Engage the Rockies. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe for more great content. If you'd like the full articles from the stories we read today, sign up to our email list at engagetherockies.com, and we'll send you the show notes each week. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.